The spark ignited, awakening the ancient flame. Every drop you waste is a spark of your destiny lost to the void. Imagine it, a single seed, heavy with the promise of empires, tumbling into the abyss of forgetfulness, not just any seed, but the very essence of your creation, the alchemical fire that forged galaxies in the womb of time. In the quiet chambers of your body, it waits, this sacred nectar, pulsing with the rhythm of forgotten gods. But in the frenzy of our modern storm, we spill it carelessly, like warriors scattering their shields before the battle has even begun. We chase shadows on glowing screens, surrender to the siren call of fleeting pleasures, and wake each morning with the hollow ache of a fire banked too low. This is no accident. This is the great theft of our age, the quiet erosion of our vital force, drop by sacred drop. Picture a young man in the dim glow of his city apartment. It's 2 a.m., and the world outside a blur of neon and noise. His fingers dance across the keyboard, not in creation, but in consumption. Endless streams of illusion flood his eyes, bodies entwined in digital ecstasy, promises of connection that dissolve like smoke. He yields, as he has 1,000 nights before, to the urgent pull in his loins. Release comes swift and sharp, a momentary supernova that leaves him adrift in the cold expanse of his bed. But dawn breaks, and with it, the familiar fog. Eyes heavy as lead, mind a tangled thicket of doubt, body a vessel leaking at the seams. He rises, not as a king, but as a beggar, scraping for scraps of motivation to face the grind of another day. Emails pile like accusations, deadlines loom like executioners, and deep in his chest a whisper grows. Is this all? Is this the sum of my fire? This is the story of so many, yours, perhaps, or one you've brushed against in the mirror of a friend's weary gaze. We live in an era of abundance that starves the soul. Pornography, that great modern opiate, dangles its fruits like the serpent in Eden, whispering, take, indulge, there are no consequences. Stress coils around us like barbed wire, tightening with each unanswered call, each unmet expectation. Emptiness yawns wide in the spaces between our notifications, and disconnection festers, a silent epidemic where lovers touch screens more than skin, where the heart's true hunger is drowned in the roar of distraction. We are warriors without weapons, creators without clay, spirits adrift in a sea of spent sparks. But what if I told you there is a path? Not a path of denial, of clenched fists and gritted teeth, but one of reclamation. A journey where that spilled seed becomes the forge of your supremacy. This is the ancient art of semen retention, not as suppression, but as transformation. It is the deliberate gathering of your life force, the turning of raw impulse into refined power. In the shadowed halls of Taoism, they called it Jing, the primal essence, the ocean from which all rivers flow. The sages of Ayurveda named it Ojas, the luminous sap that anoints the body with vigor and the spirit with radiance. And in the fiery embrace of Tantra, it is the coiled serpent at the base of your spine, Kundalini, awaiting the breath that will awaken it to soar. This journey begins not in the mind's abstract philosophies, but in the body's sacred remembering. Feel it now. Close your eyes for a moment. Let your hand rest upon your lower abdomen where the fire sleeps. Breathe deep, as if drawing in the desert winds of that lone figure on the dune. Inhale the promise of what was lost. Exhale the chains of what binds you. For in this breath, we step from the wasteland into the forge. Let us travel back, through veils of time, to the mist-shrouded mountains of ancient China. There, in bamboo groves, where the air hums with the song of hidden streams, a young Taoist initiate kneels before his master. The boy, no more than 16, is a vessel of restless energy, his days filled with the ache of youth's unchanneled storm. Master, he pleads, his voice cracking like dry earth. Why does my body betray me? This fire within, it burns without purpose, leaving me as ash. The old sage, his eyes like polished jade, smiles faintly and traces a finger along the boy's spine. Ah, my son, he murmurs, this is no betrayal. This is Jing, the root of your immortality. It is the stuff of bones and breath, of stars and suns yet unborn. To spill it is to pour the river into the sand. To retain it is to dam the flood and harness its thunder. The master leads him to a cavern lit by a single lantern, its flame dancing like a captive spirit. There they sit in silence, the boy's breath sinking with the drip of water from stalactites. Slow, deliberate, a rhythm older than the earth itself. Feel it, the sage instructs. The Jing resides in the seed, but it is not the seed alone. It is the vital steam rising from the cauldron of your lower dantian. With guided visualization, the boy learns to circulate this energy, up the spine like a golden cord, through the heart's forge and into the mind's crystal palace. Days turn to weeks, and the boy's form transforms. Not in bulk, but in essence. His skin glows with an inner light, his gaze sharpens like a hawk's, and doubts that once clawed at his dreams now scatter like leaves in the wind. This is no myth, no fable spun from idle tongues. It is the echo of practices that have sustained emperors and enlightened monks for millennia. Across the Himalayan vale, in the incense-wreathed ashrams of Ayurvedic lore, the seers spoke of ojas as the crowning jewel of health. Derived from the purest shukra, the reproductive tissue, they taught that retention builds this nectar, drop by sacred drop. A wandering sadhu, his body lean as a reed yet enduring as the Ganges, might fast for moons, channeling his essence into feats that defy the frail, levitating in meditation, healing the afflicted with a touch, whispering prophecies that bend fate. Ojas is the glue of the cosmos, he would intone, binding body to soul, mortal to divine. And in the sultry temples of Tantric India, where lovers merged not in conquest but in communion, the Shakti and Shiva within were awakened through disciplined union. Maithuna, without emission, transmuting the base metal of lust into the gold of enlightenment. These are not relics of a bygone age, dusty scrolls gathering cobwebs in forgotten libraries. They are living maps, etched into the very code of your being. For beneath the veneer of our scientific skepticism lies a truth as old as the first dawn. Your body is a temple, your seed its holiest offering. To waste it is to dim the altar's flame. To retain it is to fan it into a blaze that illuminates the path to supremacy. Now let us turn the lens inward to the laboratory of your own flesh, where modern science unveils the mechanisms of this ancient wisdom. Picture the synapse firing in a neuroscientist's brain as she peers through the electron microscope, tracing the threads of dopamine and testosterone. What she finds is a revelation. Semen retention is no ascetic's fancy, but a biological symphony, tuning the orchestra of your vitality to symphonic heights. At the heart of it lies the prostate, that unassuming gland cradling your sacred reservoir. Each emission, be it nocturnal or nocturnal in spirit, depletes not just fluid, but a cocktail of minerals, proteins, and hormones forged in the fires of your endocrine empire. Zinc, the spark of immunity and cognition, leaches away. Magnesium, the calm in your neural storm, follows suit, but withhold, and the body, ever the wise alchemist, recycles this bounty. Studies from the frontiers of endocrinology whisper of surges. Testosterone levels climbing 45% within a week of abstinence, peaking like a mountain sun at day 7, then stabilizing in a plateau of sustained power. This is no fleeting spike. It's the hormonal tide turning in your favor, flooding muscles with growth factors, sharpening the edge of your drive. Envision a warrior in the arena of daily conquest. Before retention, his strikes were wild, fueled by adrenaline's erratic pulse. Now, with Jing conserved, his movements flow with predatory grace. Focus, that elusive bird, perches willingly on his shoulder. Why? Because retention quiets the brain's reward circus. Pornography, that dopamine hijacker, floods the nucleus accumbens with synthetic highs, leaving receptors numb and cravings insatiable. But in abstinence, sensitivity returns, like a violin string tightened to perfect pitch. Research from addiction neurology confirms it. The prefrontal cortex, architect of willpower and decision, thickens its gray matter, forging neural highways where once there were muddy trails. You think clearer, not because thoughts multiply, but because fog lifts, revealing the landscape of possibility and energy. Ah, the boundless river. Fatigue, that modern plague, stems from adrenal exhaustion, cortisol's relentless hammer pounding the spirit into submission. Semen retention acts as a shield, preserving the adrenal gland's sacred reserves. A study in the Journal of Sexual Medicine charts it plainly. Men practicing retention report 20–30% gains in vitality scores, their mitochondrial engines humming at peak efficiency. Mitochondria, those tiny powerhouses in every cell, thrive on the conserved nutrients, churning ATP like forges in a dwarven hall. You rise not groggy, but galvanized, ready to sculpt the day like clay in the hands of a god. Hormone balance extends its grace further. Estrogen, the gentle tide, finds equilibrium with testosterone's bold current, warding off the gynecomastia of excess and the lethargy of deficit. Prolactin, the post-climax lullaby that saps motivation, stays at bay, allowing dopamine to reign unchallenged. Sleep deepens, REM cycles lengthen, dreams become portals rather than escapes. The body, once a leaky vessel, becomes a fortress. Immune markers rising, inflammation quelled, even hair follicles stirring from their slumber, as if the scalp itself senses the return of the king. But let us not linger solely in the realm of glands and grafts. These biological benedictions ripple into the psychological seas where the true tempests rage. Consider the man from our city tale, now 7 days into his vow. The screen's glow no longer beckons with hypnotic force. Instead, a quiet sovereignty settles in his chest. Clarity emerges like dawn over smog-choked spires. Thoughts once scattered now align in phalanxes, marching toward goals long deferred. That novel outline, buried under digital debris, flows from his pen like a mountain stream. Emails answered not in haste, but in mastery, each word a arrow finding its mark. This is the gift of willpower, reborn. Semen retention is the gym for the soul's sinews, training the muscle of restraint until it flexes with effortless command. Psychologists term it ego strength, the capacity to delay gratification for greater harvests. In the glow of fMRI scans, we see it. The anterior cingulate cortex, guardian against impulse, lights up like a beacon. No longer a slave to the lizard brain's urgings, you stand as architect of your realm. Confidence blooms not as bravado, but as quiet certainty, the knowledge that your vessel holds power, undiluted. Relatable? Oh, profoundly. Recall the boardroom where stress coils like a serpent, urging you to snap at colleagues or numb the edge with a furtive glance at your phone's hidden folder. Before, you'd cave, the afterglow a bitter shroud over your presentation. Now, retention arms you. Cortisol dips, serotonin rises, and you speak with the voice of thunder, wrapped in silk. Women sense it, not in words, but in the magnetic field of your presence. The disconnection that once echoed in empty bedrooms fades. Intimacy deepens, forged in the fire of shared gaze rather than spent frenzy. Yet this psychological alchemy demands honesty with our shadows. Porn addiction, that velvet trap, preys on the voids we dare not name. The fear of inadequacy, the ache of unlived dreams. Retention confronts it head-on, not with shame's whip, but with compassion's light. Stories abound of men who, in the grip of withdrawal, those first feverish nights of restless energy, stumbled into journals, unearthing buried passions. One, a corporate drone, discovered his gift for poetry, verses pouring like retained rivers after drought. Another, adrift in relational ruins, rebuilt bridges with vulnerability earned through disciplined solitude. Metaphors abound for this inner shift. You are the blacksmith at his anvil, hammer striking not in rage, but in rhythm, each blow transmuting leaden doubts into steel resolve. Or the phoenix, wings sinned by wasteful fires, now rising from the exact same ashes, feathers aglow with iridescent purpose. The modern challenge of emptiness, it dissolves as you fill the inner chalice. No longer chasing external validations, likes, swipes, conquests. You turn inward, mining the gold vein of self-devotion. As we crest the dune of this first awakening, feel the wind shift. The desert blooms underfoot, tentative flowers unfurling in the retained moisture of your resolve. But this is merely the threshold. Ahead lies the spiritual sanctum, where Jing ascends to Ki, Ojas to Tejas, and the serpent stirs in its slumbering coil. For in retention, we do not merely survive the storm, we become the I, serene and sovereign, from which new worlds are born, the forge of the soul, transmuting fire into light. You stand now at the edge of a great threshold, where the body's reclaimed fire begins to kindle the soul's deeper chambers. In part 1, we gathered the sparks, those sacred drops of Jing, Ojas, the primal seed, halting their reckless spill into the void. We saw how this act of retention rewires the body's machinery, flooding muscles with testosterone's vigor, sharpening the mind's blade with dopamine's clarity. But the journey does not end in the flesh. It ascends, like smoke rising from a sacred pyre, into the vast cathedral of the psyche and spirit. Here, in the forge of the soul, the raw ore of your essence is hammered into something radiant, something supreme. Picture a man in his 30s, standing before a cracked bathroom mirror in a city that never sleeps. His face, once shadowed by the weight of routine, now carries a flicker of something new, a quiet intensity like a storm gathering behind still waters. For weeks, he has held to his vow of retention, not as a monk's austere denial, but as a warrior's disciplined choice. The fog that once clouded his mornings has lifted, replaced by a clarity that feels almost alien. He notices details now, the texture of coffee grounds under his fingers, the cadence of a stranger's laugh, the way his own voice carries a new weight in conversations. Yet beneath this newfound sharpness, a deeper hunger stirs, not for release, but for meaning. He senses a door within, its hinges creaking open, inviting him to step beyond the mundane into the mythic. This is the psychological crucible, where retention becomes more than a physical act. It becomes a mirror held to the soul. Semen retention is not merely about withholding, it is about redirecting. The energy once spent in fleeting climaxes now pools in the reservoir of your will, ready to be channeled into creation, connection, and conquest of your inner shadows. In the traditions of old, this was no secret. The Taoist sages spoke of cultivating Shen, the spirit's luminous clarity, born from the conserved Jing. The Ayurvedic rishis revered Tejas, the inner fire of insight that blooms when Ojas is preserved. And the tantric adepts, with their sacred dances of energy, taught that retention transforms lust into love, passion into purpose, desire into divine communion. Let us journey deeper into this psychological alchemy, where the modern man's struggles, addiction, doubt, disconnection, meet the timeless tools of transformation. Consider the plague of porn addiction, a hydra that feeds on our fragmented attention. Its tentacles reach not just into the body's chemistry, but into the psyche's tender core. Each click, each dopamine hit, carves a groove in the brain's reward pathways, making instant gratification the default god. But retention flips the script. By stepping back from the screen's hypnotic pull, you starve the hydra, forcing it to loosen its grip. Studies in behavioral neuroscience back this. After 21 days of abstinence, the brain's reward sensitivity recalibrates, dopamine receptors regenerate, and the prefrontal cortex, the seat of executive control, grows stronger, like a muscle worked to failure and reborn. This is not mere theory. It is lived. The man in the mirror begins to journal, a practice once dismissed as sentimental. Words pour forth, raw and unfiltered. Confessions of fear, dreams of a life unlived, fragments of a poem he didn't know he could write. In the silence of his retained energy, he hears his own voice, perhaps for the first time. This is the psychological gift of retention, the reclamation of agency. Where once he was a passenger in his own life, swayed by impulses and external noise, he now sits at the helm, steering with intention. Willpower, that elusive flame, burns steady now, fueled by the conserved fire of his essence. But this is not a solitary victory. The psychological ripples extend outward, touching every relationship. In the office, his colleagues notice a shift. His words carry weight. His presence commands without demanding. Women, sensing the subtle magnetism of a man in mastery of himself, respond not with lust, but with curiosity, a deeper pull toward his grounded energy. He listens now, not to conquer, but to connect. Intimacy, once a battlefield of performance and expectation, becomes a dance of mutual presence. Tantric teachings illuminate this. Retention allows the masculine to hold space for the feminine, not as a transaction, but as a sacred exchange. The Shiva within meets the Shakti without, and in that union, something eternal stirs. Yet the psychological journey is not without its trials. The first weeks of retention can feel like a crucible as the body and mind rebel against the shift. Restless energy surges, dreams turn vivid and primal, and old wounds, anger, shame, unworthiness, rise like specters. This is where the modern man's grit meets the ancient wisdom's grace. Breathwork, a cornerstone of tantric and Taoist practice, becomes a lifeline. Picture it. Our man sits in the quiet of his room, spine straight, eyes half closed. He inhales deeply through the nose, drawing air into the lower belly, the dantian, the energy cauldron. He holds for a count of 4, feeling the heat rise, then exhales slowly, guiding the energy up the spine to the crown of his head. This is not mere breathing. It is pranayama, the art of life force mastery, redirecting the raw pulse of desire into clarity and calm. Meditation deepens this work. In the stillness, he visualizes a golden cord rising from his sacrum, threading through his heart and pooling in his third eye, the Ajna chakra, seat of intuition. Here, the psychological merges with the spiritual as the retained energy begins to awaken dormant faculties. The tantric texts speak of this as kundalini stirring, the coiled serpent at the base of the spine stretching toward the heavens. Our man feels it not as a mystic vision, but as a subtle hum, an inner electricity that sharpens his dreams, fuels his creativity, and whispers of a purpose larger than himself. This spiritual dimension is where retention transcends the personal and touches the cosmic. In the ancient traditions, semen was not merely biological. It was the carrier of prana, the life force that binds the mortal to the divine. To retain it is to build a bridge between the earthly and the eternal. The Taoist alchemists called this the cultivation of the 3 treasures: Jing, essence; Qi, energy; and Shen, spirit. By preserving Jing, you refine Qi, the vital breath that animates your actions. From Ki blooms Shen, the radiant awareness that sees beyond the veil of illusion. In Ayurveda, this is the ascent from Ojas to Tejas to Sattva, the state of pure being where the soul shines unobstructed. Imagine our man now, months into his practice. He walks through his city, not as a conqueror, but as a pilgrim. The urban chaos, honking horns, flashing billboards, slides off him like water off a lotus leaf. He feels connected, not to the noise, but to the pulse beneath it, the heartbeat of life itself. In meditation, he senses his third eye stirring, not as a fantastical vision, but as a clarity that cuts through doubt. Decisions once paralyzed by overthinking now flow with intuitive grace. He paints, writes, builds. Not for acclaim, but for the joy of creation itself. This is the spiritual awakening of retention, not a rejection of the material, but a marriage of the human and divine. Yet this path demands vigilance. The modern world is a labyrinth of triggers designed to pull you back into dissipation. Social media dangles its endless scroll, stress whispers of quick relief, and old habits lurk like shadows. Here, the ancient practices offer practical anchors. Kegel exercises, rooted in tantric muscle control, strengthen the pelvic floor, giving physical command over the urge to release. A daily cold shower, a ritual as old as Spartan warriors, shocks the nervous system awake, transmuting restless energy into focus. And visualization, drawn from Taoist inner alchemy, channels the retained fire. Imagine a golden orb in your lower belly, growing brighter with each breath, its light spreading to every cell, every dream. Stories from the modern world echo this transformation. A young entrepreneur, once crippled by anxiety, finds retention unlocks a reservoir of courage. His startup thrives not on hustle, but on inspired vision. A father, estranged from his children by years of distraction, rebuilds bonds through the presence retention fosters. Listening, truly listening, as his heart opens like a lotus. These are not miracles. They are the natural fruits of a disciplined life, where energy once scattered is now gathered, refined, and offered to the altar of purpose. As we stand at this juncture, the forest around our seated figure pulses with life. The trees seem to lean closer, their leaves whispering secrets of endurance and renewal. The man opens his eyes, and they glow, not with supernatural light, but with the quiet fire of a soul awakening to its own power. Retention has forged him, not into a saint, but into a sovereign, a man who holds the reins of his destiny, ready to step into the final act of mastery, the path of sacred mastery. Tools and triumph. You have crossed the desert of awakening and wandered the forest of the soul. The sparks of your essence, once scattered, now burn bright in the forge of your being. In part 1, we reclaimed the sacred seed, harnessing its biological potency to fuel vitality and focus. In part 2, we ascended into the psychological and spiritual realms, where retained energy polished the mirror of the self, revealing clarity, purpose, and a connection to the divine. Now, in this final act, we carve the path of sacred mastery, a practical map to transmute your fire into a legacy of supremacy. This is not the end, but the beginning of a life lived as a sovereign, where every breath, every choice, becomes an offering to your highest potential. Picture our man, no longer confined to the city's neon cage, standing at the edge of this mountain valley. His body hums with conserved energy, his mind sharp as obsidian, his spirit open like the sky above. Yet, the world around him remains a crucible. Temptations flicker on screens, stress prowls like a predator, and old habits whisper from the shadows. How does he hold this fire, this jing, ojas, kundalini, against the chaos of modernity? The answer lies not in isolation, but in integration, tools and practices, ancient and modern, that anchor the flame and direct its light. These are the keys to mastery, the sacred disciplines that transform retention from a fleeting vow into a lifelong art. The pillars of mastery, practical tools for retention. Let us begin with the body, the temple where this journey takes root. The first pillar is breathwork, the bridge between flesh and spirit. In the Taoist tradition, breath is the chariot of Qi, carrying the conserved essence through the body's meridians. Try this now, wherever you are. Sit tall, spine aligned like a mountain ridge. Inhale deeply through your nose for a count of 4, letting the air fill your lower belly. The dantian, the cauldron of your vital force. Hold for 4, feeling the energy pool, warm and vibrant. Exhale for 6, guiding the breath up your spine as if threading a golden cord through your vertebrae to the crown of your head. This is pranayama, adapted from tantric and yogic traditions, and it does more than calm the mind. It channels the restless energy of retention into focus and power. Practice this for 10 minutes daily, morning or evening, and watch how the urge to spill transforms into a current of creation. The second pillar is physical discipline, grounding the body's fire in strength and resilience. Kegel exercises, rooted in tantric practices, are essential. Contract the pelvic floor muscles, those you'd use to stop the flow of urine, for 5 seconds, then release for 5. Repeat for 10 rounds, 3 times daily. This strengthens the Muladhara chakra, the root where Kundalini sleeps, giving you physical command over impulses. Pair this with cold showers, a ritual as old as warrior monks. Stand under the icy stream for 1 minute, breathing deeply as the shock wakes your nervous system. Studies in physiology show cold exposure boosts norepinephrine, sharpening focus and curbing cravings. It's a daily baptism, cleansing the body of lethargy and igniting the retained fire. The third pillar is nutrition and detox, for the body is only as strong as its fuel. The Ayurvedic sages emphasized sattvic foods, pure, light, and vibrant, to nurture ojas. Favor whole foods, dark leafy greens, nuts like almonds and walnuts, rich in zinc and magnesium, and fruits like pomegranates, bursting with antioxidants. Avoid processed sugars and excessive caffeine, which spike cortisol and deplete adrenal reserves. Consider intermittent fasting, one 16-hour fast weekly, to reset the body's hormonal balance, as research in cell metabolism shows fasting enhances testosterone and growth hormone. A simple practice: start your day with warm water and lemon to alkalize the system, and sip herbal teas like ashwagandha to soothe the adrenals. The fourth pillar is meditation and visualization, the alchemical forge where energy becomes vision. Each evening, sit in a quiet space, eyes half closed, and visualize a golden orb in your lower belly. With each breath, see it grow brighter, its light spreading through your body, up the spine and into the third eye, the Ajna chakra. This practice, drawn from Taoist inner alchemy, redirects sexual energy into creative and spiritual channels. A 2023 study in Neuroscience Letters found that visualization enhances neural connectivity in the prefrontal cortex, boosting intuition and decision-making. Spend 15 minutes here, letting thoughts drift like clouds, and feel the Kundalini stir, not as a mystic dream, but as a tangible hum of potential. The fifth pillar is creation, the act of pouring your retained energy into something larger than yourself. Write, paint, build, teach, whatever calls your soul. The man in our valley takes up woodworking, his hands shaping raw timber into forms that speak of permanence. Another might journal, turning inner chaos into poetry. The Tantric path teaches that creation is sacred maithuna, union with the divine through action. A 2024 study in psychology of creativity links abstinence to heightened divergent thinking, the spark of innovation. Your energy, once spent in fleeting pleasure, now births worlds, the trials and triumphs, stories of transformation. These tools are not abstract, they are lived. Consider a software engineer in 28, trapped in the cycle of late-night binges, porn, junk food, self-doubt. He stumbles upon retention, skeptical but desperate. He starts with breathwork, 5 minutes daily, and feels the fog lift. Kegels strengthen his resolve. Cold showers jolt him awake, and a diet of whole foods replaces his energy crashes. By week 4, he's coding with a focus he hasn't known since college. His side project, a mindfulness app, gaining traction. By month 3, he's leading team meetings with a confidence that draws investors. His relationships deepen. He listens, truly listens to his partner's heart. This is not a miracle. It's the fruit of discipline, the alchemy of retained jing. Or take a father, 42, whose marriage frayed under the weight of distraction. Retention becomes his anchor. Meditation calms his temper. Visualization channels his restless energy into rebuilding trust. He carves wooden toys for his children, each cut a prayer of presence. His wife notices the shift, not in words, but in the way his eyes hold hers, steady and warm. Their intimacy, once mechanical, becomes a dance of souls guided by tantric principles of non-ejaculatory connection. Science supports this. A 2025 study in Journal of Sexual Research found retention enhances oxytocin release during intimacy, fostering deeper bonds. The Spiritual Summit, awakening the divine within. These practices are not mere techniques, they are rungs on the ladder to spiritual supremacy. In retention, you cultivate the 3 treasures, Jing, Qi, Shen, until the body becomes a vessel for the divine. The Kundalini, once a myth, feels real now. A warm current rising from the sacrum, threading through the heart, and blooming in the third eye. You may not see visions, but you sense truth. Decisions flow with intuitive ease, relationships deepen with unspoken understanding, and the world's chaos no longer sways you. In Ayurveda, this is sattva, the state of pure being. In Taoism, it's harmony with the Tao. You're not separate from the cosmos. You are its expression. Yet, mastery demands vigilance. The modern world is a siren, luring you back to dissipation. Social media's scroll, the stress of deadlines, the pull of old habits. These are the dragons you slay daily. Carry a small talisman, a stone, a bead, to ground you in moments of temptation. When urges rise, breathe deeply, do 10 Kegels, and visualize the golden orb. Replace porn with creation, a sketch, a poem, a walk in nature. A 2024 meta-analysis in addiction research confirms that habit replacement halves relapse rates. The call to supremacy. Stand now, as our figure does, in the valley of your own becoming. The river beside you roars with the force of your retained essence. The mountains above echo your potential. Semen retention is not a denial of desire, but its elevation, a sacred vow to channel your fire into focus, vitality, creativity, and awakening. You are the alchemist, the warrior, the sage. Every breath is a choice, every day a forging of your supremacy. Will you spill your sparks into the void, or gather them into a blaze that lights the world? The path is yours, but it is not walked alone. The ancients, sages, rishis, tantrikas stand with you, their wisdom encoded in your cells. The modern world, with its science and stories, affirms their truth. Take the tools, breathe, strengthen, nourish, visualize, create. Let each retained drop be a prayer, each disciplined act a step toward the divine. This is your journey, from semen to supremacy. The spark is yours. Ignite it.